Hello everybody once again. We hope everybody is in the fullness of health as we look forward to, I think this is our 67th attempt, 97th attempt at this particular broadcast. Looking back at the week that was in it, looking back to last weekend in particular with the All-Ireland hurling finals, and my God, Kilkenny still standing. Brian Cody, you nearly know the statistics at this stage, 24 years this man has been in charge, won 11 All-Irelands and appeared in 17, and if going replays, I think that's 19. They reckon that at this stage that the number of players that have started in All-Irelands for him since he started his campaign way back in, is it 1999, that the numbers will be around 67 when the All-Ireland final gets underway in just over a week's time now. And well done, by the way, to Colm Lyons from Nemo Rangers. He's got the job of refereeing, which is a huge honour for him, his club, and of course his family, and the officials that work with him. But, you know, like a lot of the talk going into last Saturday, was it, whatever, was, you know, about the resurgence in Clare, and okay, like they played really well in Munster, but I mean, it was so evident against Wexford, and had a Wexford wing back not made a mistake that day, where allowed the ball to slip into Adam Shanahan, and from that they got a point and then a goal. I think Clare could have been beaten against Wexford, but that was that story. And then of course in that All-Ireland final is going to be the mighty Limerick that they'll be meeting, and it was a great game obviously between themselves in Galway. But interestingly enough, if you check back over the past couple of years, Galway and Limerick have always had good games. And you know, from watching Limerick now, and we've watched them, I won't say far too often because of the joy to watch any good sports team, regardless of code. They've won every which way you want, you know, in terms of coming from behind instead of being well in, as well as being well in front. And the fact that the team management were able to replace 5, I think, of the front 8 from midfield up, just shows you the kind of strength and depth that they have as well. They brought on 5 subs, David Reedy being one of them, and he got 3 points and fouled for another. And I know, look, that's sometimes the way the cookie crumbles, that the people that you bring on make all the difference. An interesting observation, I think, on this occasion is that all the provincial champions are still standing. And like sometimes it's amazing how the media work around these things. When Kerry played poorly against Mayo, we heard terms like Ducty Diesel. Where that comes from, I don't know. And that because of the 4-week break. Whereas for Limerick, it was absolutely no problem. For Kilkenny, likewise. But whatever you're having yourself seems to be the way of punditry at this stage. And of course, looking forward and back was the big story then on Tuesday night. Well, Kieran Kingston announced that he was not going to seek another term as Cork hurling manager. And then we thought, oh my God, this is great crack. We're going to be treated to a couple of weeks now of a circus pontificating as to who should get the job. And of course, with all those people who think that maybe an outsider should come in, the likes of Davy and many more that have made their mark. And of course, like the problem with them, I won't say there's any problem with them, but you pay them big bucks and they're out the gap in a couple of years' time. Honestly, there are times when maybe they do make a difference, but I just couldn't understand it, because like Cork under age seems to have been doing well, and the coaches in Cork are well up to the mark. But we thought we'd be treated like, you do remember when the football vacancy arose last year after the departure of Ronan McCarthy. They actually advertised the position. See me, that was the protocol. There was no advertising. Monday evening, job done. They had their man Pat Ryan, who some of you obviously and most of you will know. He was an outstanding hurler himself with his club, winning 2 county championships. And then at a young age he became coach of the team, and they won on that occasion as well, and he stepped up. He'd been a selector, I'd say, maybe with Cork senior team in the past, but his mark was made when he won the 2 under-20 titles back to back. And a bit like Kieran Kingston, I didn't know him that well, except to hear that everything about him was positive. The same with Pat Ryan, that, you know, a really solid individual, and you know, we wish him well in this. And of course, what some of us don't realise is that this is like, you know, appointing a full staff it's not just a manager, you've got the coaches and strength and conditioning and dietitians and medical people, logistics or what have you. And, there's a little bit of speculation now as to who's going to be joining Pat Ryan on this occasion. Probably a few that were with him from the under 20 days, fellas like Wayne Sherlock, Brendan Coleman, Fergal Condon, who won 3 counties. He was the coach of Imokilly that won 3 counties. And then you have Don Romani, who moved up to the... he took over as manager of the under 20, not too sure how that's going to pan out. And also you have 2 of the coaches from last year, North Furlong and Pat Mulcahy, what roles they're going to have. Maybe not with this team, but they'll probably stay involved in coaching of the inter-county teams. Interesting though, it must be said that prior to the departure of the outgoing management, there was a few shots fired across the bows of people who get involved, local players who got involved in various media business. This is a huge industry now for guys, in terms of, they can have columns and magazines, papers, they can join the punditry game, or the latest to become a podcaster and get involved in that. And it would appear that the outgoing management, I saw, Pat Mulcahy, Diarmuid O'Sullivan, Kieran Kingston himself, saying that it was very disappointing to hear former players, and I tell you something, they narrowed this down, that they knew who they were talking about, being critical of everything they did, that all the players were being ignored, that some of the training wasn't up to scratch. But I suppose, look, I think anybody who gets involved in management, and that's the tough part about it, must realise that. And thinking here in Cork, if they brought in these outside managers, they paid them 100,000 maybe, easy to criticise them. The guys that do it here do it for absolutely nothing. They get expenses going to training, and I'm not saying that they don't get that and they're entitled to it. But I think they must accept that there is money and serious money in criticism. And sometimes I even though I'm involved in this game myself a little bit, that the people don't realise that people that are in the media business, they treat it as a job. Some of them, and that's it. And I often, amuse me a little bit that people thank press people for doing this and doing that. They're paid to do it. It's simple as that. But then the other side of the coin, remember, there is absolutely no doubt there is money in criticism, and there is probably money in abuse if you want to go down that route. Anyway, we wish them well. I think it was an absolutely great appointment, and well done to Cork GA. They got it done in double quick time. Did they advertise for the job? Did they what? Did they allow us 3 or 4 weeks of having the great crack and entertaining ourselves? No, they cut out all that from the word go. Anyway, this weekend, 3 big football games are going to dominate the scenario. You have the inaugural Tailteann Cup final played on Saturday at 3 o'clock in Croke Park between 2 proud counties, Cavan and Westmeath. And they were the 2 best teams in this competition, which says a lot about it. There was a lot of great matches in it. And, look at it for its first year, you'd have to say you'd be really impressed with the standard, with the fact that it got a lot of media exposure. Now, trying to decide who's going to win it there. There's something telling me maybe I have a slight fancy for Cavan. I suppose we kind of associate Cavan maybe being higher up the food chain than Westmeath. Cavan have been up there, and they've been also down fairly low, whereas Westmeath have been hovering 2nd, 3rd division for the past number of years. But I think on this occasion, I'm going to go for the Cavan men. But of course, it doesn't matter to us once there's a good game, but to the counties that win it, they're guaranteed to be playing in the Samagoya next year. So it is great that competition worked out. You just wonder how do we survive all those years without it. And then at 5:30 Saturday evening, you have Derry and Galway. And the first thing is that Galway have all their players back, and they've a really good team, but so have Derry. And even though that we don't know a lot about maybe the Derry players because they're relatively new at this level, but fellas like Chrissy McCabe, Brendan Rogers, Conor Glass, who came home from Australia, Shane McGuigan and Garrett McKinless, they're now entering into our, I suppose, minds as serious footballers. It's going to be a big game for them, and it's going to be a big game for Galway. We associate Galway with being kind of been a kind of a classy team, but fail more times than they win in Croke Park. They haven't been there for a while, so it's huge opportunity for either of those, because when they get there, when last did you see a Galway or a Derry team? The Galway team, Dylan McHugh, outstanding. Sean Kelly, the team captain, cleared to play. Matthew Tierney, whose father played for Mayo. Matthew Tierney, whose father was a great player as well. Some of you may remember him for Sigerson Cup. He was involved in an accident in one of those Sigerson Cup, and he can now see his son playing for Galway as an outstanding. I'm sure that brings him great pleasure. Robert Finnerty, that's his father was a Mayo player. Some of our more mature viewers, listeners will remember him. And then of course you have the inside forward line that includes Shane Walsh and Damien Comer, and we spoke about Shane Walsh in particular at the treatment he got at the hands of Armagh, and I don't think it's going to happen against Derry. I fancy Galway, Derry have surprised everybody this year, no doubt in the world about that. And then of course the big one on Sunday, 3:30, a meeting of, maybe it is a kind of an old firm partnership that dominated a lot of, our mature monks their lives growing up, and that's the meeting of Kerry and Dublin. Not since 2009, imagine, have Kerry knocked Dublin out of an All-Ireland series, an All-Ireland championship, and that Kevin McMiniman, when he came on in that final in 2011, has been downhill for Kerry in terms of All-Ireland since then against Dublin. But it's going to be an amazing match, and the first thing that, well, at this stage, I don't know on Thursday morning whether the Dublin will have Conor O'Callaghan, James McCarthy back. If they do, I think they'll go into the game as favourites, because they'll be back as good as they were. Okay, they had the blip last year, and you get the impression that this year, despite the fact they won 6 All-Irelands, that this could be the real one for them, beating Kerry when Kerry are, if you like, seen as some people as the favourites. And if Kerry were to lose this, and especially if they were to lose it against the Dublin team, if Conor O'Callaghan wasn't able to play, or James McCarthy, I think this would be soul destroying in the extreme for a county like Kerry. Dean Rock, an outstanding free taker now. I think he scored something like 125 so far, 122 of those some dead ball situations. Then on the other side of the coin, Sean O'Shea, a really, really good player in terms of place balls and from play. But of course, a little question mark here is, what's the story with, Adrian Spillane? Also, you'd hear stories about David Clifford, and isn't this the biggest one of all for him? In one sense, look, there's nothing going to say he's not going to be an outstanding footballer, but we saw last week, didn't we, what Mickey Butler, 22 years of age, one of the latest Kilkenny players, what he was able to do to Tony Kelly. And it was amazing looking back in that I actually had forgotten, or maybe forgotten is the wrong word, was merely brainwashed into thinking that there's no man marking anymore, that his defensive systems, but they all pointed when the game was over that this individual Mickey Butler was the man. Well, is there another Mickey Butler, I wonder, around the Dublin team will be keeping an eye on David Clifford? So it's going to be an absolutely outstanding one. The Kerry defence as well, a lot of talk was made about that last year, but then they brought in this down guru in this respect. So has he made the difference? Well, we'll have to wait and see. What 3 really great games of football to look forward to. Moving to Cork GA and our the interdivisional, the non-seeded divisions. Well, we had a great final on Tuesday night between Avondhu and Uhulla, and it did level 19 points apiece before eventually in extra time the North Cork side drove on and won it, and you had Stephen Condon getting 14 points and the goal coming from Jack Toomey from Kilshannig. Mark Keane was missing in that. So what that means now is that Avondhu are going to join Imokilly, UCC and MTU in another little competition which will be played later on to produce one winner for the quarter-final of the county championship. And tonight, a big game for Carbery and Avondhu when they meet in Coach in the corresponding football final. can Evan do the double, or will Carberry, they had the good win against Beara, they have a run out of 2 matches, and I kind of fancy them, but these games, if you look at them, in the hurling, 2 out of the 7 games went extra time, and other games are close as well. Likewise with the football, I think it has been as good as it can be, and I would say it was no doubt a successful competition, and I think going forward, lessons learned this year will add to it. I would say that maybe, if I had my way, which will say thankfully I don't, I'd be getting rid of UCC and MTU out of it, and I'd finish the competition right now at this time of year to have the winner ready for the quarter final. However, if the colleges are to be entertained, I think that you could be having the seeded divisions and the colleges playing out the competition over the past couple of weeks as well, and we'd have one more final. We might have to start it a week earlier, but anyway, that's for others to sort out. The first county final, if you like, in terms of club competition, goes on this Saturday in Mallow. Is the Junior C football Ballyfihan. We told you we'd know too much about them. We know less now, but anyway, they travel to Mallow and they take on Fremont in that Junior C football final. There's a Junior B football semi-final to be played at 4 o'clock, and that's in Caelkel between Garnish and Diarmid O'Honas. Kind of fancy Garnish in that one. I know that one of the Terry brothers got injured playing for Beara. He would be a huge loss, no doubt about that. And whoever wins that will be playing for the Runnies. And what a game they had on Tuesday night against Oliver Plunkett's from Ahiola in West Cork. Father O'Neill's from Ballymacoda direction, probably better known as a hurling side, but look at the crowd of players they had tugged out. And I think that Oliver Plunkett's, they scored 114. It was tough going then to be beaten by a team that got 3 goals, but that's the joy of sport, as we said. So it's, like it just shows we're slowly but surely getting there towards the start of the championship. One other observation before those that are trying to bury the split season: it's amazing that if they could concentrate 2 things, their efforts on getting inter-county managers and inter-county players, make themselves more available to the members of the Fourth Estate to raise the profile. Like there's an interview, I think Limerick are probably the only team now that are allowing people in to have a chat. Like there's been media night, and like all the media wanted some player to talk, and if he talks about his fishing life, that will do them, but it gets them column inches. So rather than berating or being critical of when the clubs will start, that the GA is losing out, why don't they work on getting more when the GA season is on? And by the way, all those media people, if they really want to, there's a huge product out there. It's called the Club Championship. It just means that TV editors, TV companies, newspaper editors can get behind this, because believe me, all it needs is a massive marketing campaign. In terms of ladies sports in Cork, well, both Cork Camogie teams are through to the All-Ireland semi-finals, and those semi-finals I think are on the 3rd of July, the intermediate and the senior. But grave concern now concerns the senior because of injuries, suspension and whatever. Orla Cronin has departed the scene, a huge loss. You've Aisling Thompson could be out the next day facing a ban because of getting, I think it was red carded the last day in the last match against Tipperary, and you've Laura Tracy injured. And it depends now on who they meet in that semi-final, because the 2 quarter-finals, which are on next weekend, will have Dublin playing Kilkenny. I expect Kilkenny to win that. And the other game is between Limerick and Waterford, I would say, to win it. But the point I'm trying to make is that if Cork meet Kilkenny in the quarter-finals or in the semi-finals, with those players that I mentioned out, I think there's going to be a huge task for them. Ladies footballers are in action this Saturday when they play the All-Ireland quarter-final, 3 o'clock in Ennis. Don't have to tell you it's a huge game, but I expect them to get over that one. They play Mayo, and if they get over that, they will play the winners of the 5 o'clock game between Kerry and Armagh the other two quarterfinals, Dublin played Donegal at 2 o'clock on Saturday, and the last game on Saturday is Meath versus Galway. Moving on, if you wish, for those of you who are interested and follow rugby, you know about the Irish team being out in New Zealand, and after 2 games, 2 losses. I think maybe we're reading too much into this, to be honest with you. Like the game last Saturday, I think Ireland, I know they conceded 6 tries, but they conceded, was it 3 of them in a very short time period, and most rugby followers would tell you they were uncharacteristic, basic defensive errors. This crowd, New Zealand haven't been beaten in that park since 1995. So I think that the game next Saturday morning gives Ireland a chance. But look, it's going to be hard for Ireland to win any of those. There's 3 games left. They played this Saturday, then next Tuesday they played the Maori All Blacks, and then the following Saturday they finish off. One concern, of course, again was head injury assessment, and we saw there where Johnny Sexton came off. Now seemingly there's a new rule which is brought in, and it's called the graduated return to play protocol, and seemingly it's 12 days. But if a player hasn't a history of concussion, and how Johnny Sexton hasn't is beyond me, but seemingly not, if they perform certain tests they could come back in 7 days, and it would appear that's going to happen, that Johnny Sexton is available to play. And then you had the other situation in the game last Wednesday where Jerry Lockman was visibly shaken after a belt, and he was allowed to play, and there was a lot of concern about that. So there's a little bit of an issue for rugby. Another interesting fact of last weekend is that the Norries had a bad weekend. All the Southern Hemisphere teams winning. You had Ireland be beaten, you had England losing to Australia, Eddie Jones in a bit of trouble there. Wales, I think, were beaten by South Africa, and you had the Argentinians inflicting defeat on the Scots. So it was not good weekend, as I said, for the guys up here. In terms of soccer, well, Cork City are not playing this weekend. They're playing Stoke in a challenge game at 5 o'clock, I think, on Saturday instead. But Cove Ramblers, who were 14 games now without a win. Their new manager took over last weekend. That was Gary Keegan. Unfortunately, they lost. But they play Galway United. That's a big game for them on Friday night. And just the other bit of news from a soccer point of view is Conor Howard from here in West Cork is after signing for Derby. This man has been used his time well, I would say, in England. It's good to see him getting, I know now, just dropping down to League One. He's done that in the past and it's worked out very well for him. So we wish him the very best in that particular move. So as we always say, look, the most important thing is stay safe, and hopefully in a week's time we'll talk again.